Hi, I'm Jack Reiner, the managing partner at Graydon Firm in Cincinnati. 2021 marks the 150th anniversary of Graydon, our founding. And we're enormously proud of that milestone, but we realize that the only reason we exist, the only reason we've existed for 150 years is our clients. And so to honor our sesquicentennial, we've decided not to shine the light on ourselves, but to shine the light on those critical clients of ours. And we've started a feature called Iconic Conversations, because we are lucky enough at Graydon to represent some truly iconic clients, iconic members of the Cincinnati community. And so we launched a series of conversations that we call Iconic Conversations. And certainly the Fifth Third Bank, a longtime client of the Graydon Firm, is truly an icon in the greater Cincinnati community. So I'm honored today to be joined by Tim Elsbrock, who is the area president for the Cincinnati region of Fifth Third Bank, a longtime friend of the firm, a longtime friend of mine. Looking forward to this conversation. Tim, welcome. We're very pleased to have you.
Jack, be careful what you wish for. First, I was, really impressed that you could even come up with sesquicentennial, much less pronounce it, And two, I'm flattered to be part of an iconic conversation. First one ever, probably. Yeah. And so when you reached out and said, hey, let's do a iconic conversation, I really thought, well, we need to get a lot better content than just me and you. So I've asked Amy Purcell to join us, who is our corporate storyteller at the bank, who really curates our museum and is a way more interesting person than either you or I, and has great heritage and history about the bank. And so, Amy, I just thought maybe I'd introduce you real quick and give you an opportunity to say hello as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having us on. This is wonderful. And it's really great to see two companies that have such a long history in Cincinnati come together, and we're still here standing strong. It's lovely to be here. I will just give a little bit of our history, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay, so we started out in 1858 as the Bank of the Ohio Valley. We were located right on 3rd Street, which is actually 2nd Street today. And it was right around the time that the Civil War was starting to heat up. Banks were very unstable. The national economy was very unstable, but 11 guys, one by the name of William Scarborough and then some other entrepreneurs, got together $29,000 in capital and started the Bank of the Ohio Valley. They actually grew into one of the bigger banks in the state of Ohio and one of the more prestigious banks. That all lasted through the Civil War. So they had a great career. And then around 1871, Third National, which actually started in 1863 on 3rd Street, just about a block away from where Graydon started, Third National acquired the Bank of the Ohio Valley. And, that was in 1871, and that was the same year that Graydon started. So the bank and Graydon were very close, like just a block down from each other. Then in 1882, Queen City National opened, and around 1888, they changed their name to Fifth National. So you can kind of see how our name is going to start evolving. We have a really good legend about our name, and that is that at one point we were going to be called Third Fifth, or Fifth Third. And in 1908, when the two banks actually decided to merge, for 2 days in the Cincinnati Enquirer, we were Third Fifth. The two presidents were battling out our name. The legend is that it's all had to do with the Prohibition movement and not wanting to sound like whiskey. However, it's a great legend, but we can't claim it's truth. What we can claim is truth.
Don't let that bother you.
I know, right? We had 3 whiskey barons as presidents. So 3 of our past presidents actually made their fortune in whiskey prior to going into banking. That would be Jacob Schmidlap, and Graydon actually had really good connections with Jacob Schmidlap. Charles Fleischmann. Most people know Fleischmann as Fleischmann Yeast and the great company that it still is today. And then Oliver Perrin. So those 3 presidents were all in the whiskey trade prior to coming into banking. But in 1908, Charles Hinch was our president at the time of Fifth National. Third National, he actually won the battle and we became Fifth Third. It had nothing to do with whiskey, unfortunately. But that's the origin of our name. And the really cool thing about Third National is they had the 20th national charter in the United States. So in 1863, when they formed, they were the 20th national bank in the United States. We held that charter for years and years and years. It's something we still have the document. It's a really great thing to have in the museum. From there, you know, we stayed on 3rd Street for a really long time. Graydon was right down the block. And we do know that we had lots of connections. So Marjorie Maxwell Graydon was the sister of Jean Maxwell Graydon, who was the wife of Horace Schmidtler, who was Jacob's son. So we do know that there were many ties way back in the day. And I think the one thing that I still see just thematically that comes through from Graydon's side and Fifth Third side, really two things. The first is strength and service. And so that was our theme for a really long time. You would maybe call it a tagline today. Ran in advertisements. We talked about strength and service. And if you think about a company that's been around as long as Graydon, as long as Fifth Third, we made it through Civil War, Great Depression, World War I, World War II, the Great Recession we've made it through lots and lots of different challenging times and ups and downs. We're here today for the pandemic, always serving our community and always serving the people. You know, we wouldn't be here without those relationships and without the people that we serve. And so seeing those connections between Graydon and Fifth Third is absolutely wonderful. And I'll just end kind of here with our history. We can talk about it a little bit more if you have other questions or want to know some fun, crazy facts about the history of banking. We have a quote from G. Carlton Hill, who was one of our presidents, and this was in the 1950s and early 60s. And he said it this way, and I think it's just really nice. We have never allowed ourselves to forget that it's other people's money which is entrusted to us, nor have we lost sight of the fact that the people we serve, their problems, their needs, and their well-being are our paramount concern. And when I look at Graydon's website and the stories you have and the great work that you do, and I look at Fifth Third and the great community work we do, I see that quote coming together for both of us. So we really do have a great shared history together. And we do have board members. So Joseph Head was on our board from 1987 to 2003, a little bit closer history now. And John Warrington was on the board from 1965 to 1985. And I believe, Tim, you may have been at the bank during Joseph Head's time period on our board.
Yeah, so I remembered back to the mid and late 80s, Mr. Warrington and Joe Head serving in that capacity. And Jack, as you know, and many may not remember, you know, now in your great new offices that you moved to, what's that been, probably 6-7 years ago?
5 years ago. Five.
Yeah, used to share our building. And so those relationships are really, really tight. And I can, you know, I deeply remember the great folks that ran the Graydon firm and the great relationships we had. Guys, you know, like Bob Marriott and Robbie Kreidler and Joe Head and all of those. And, you know, and Jack, I look at you as really being the bridge between those guys and the current guys now, and, you know, and to a lesser extent, I guess that's a nice way of calling you old, but to a lesser extent, you know, me too. And, you know, and we've now subsequently handed those off to the guys that, you know, populate the bank and your firm, and to this day continue that heritage of service and community.
No doubt. Well, and, you know, and that's true. Those guys were just such lions. And we talk about guys, and now, you know, we're proud to also, you know, we have women like Monica Conan and Trish Hill and Susan Argo who, you know, really service the bank and service it well. And so we really are proud of the development of some really capable and talented women. So, you know, that's a big piece of the evolution. You know, it is funny. We were an original tenant of the Fifth Third Center in 1969, I think, and we're there until 2016. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody would ask me, particularly from out of town, would say, what's the name of your bill? Fifth Third. What building are you in? And I did know it was the merger of the Fifth National and the Third National, so I was able to give at least some explanation of the history, not nearly as eloquent or complete as Amy's. I am curious, Amy, about the museum that you mentioned. Tell us a little bit about the museum, if you could.
Sure. We've been open for just about 2 years now. And we're really focused on Fifth Third's history, obviously. We have deep, deep roots in Cincinnati. So it's a lot about Cincinnati as well. And really, we talk about how we've left our mark on the people and the places of the community. We do tend to talk about other regions across our footprint, but really we're focused on how we have been embedded in the community, how we've supported the community. And, you know, when you look back into the past, banks and financial institutions, law firms, you are the bedrock of the community. At some level, you're supporting other people, efforts that they're trying to do, businesses, whether they're trying to grow, people getting their first home, all that good stuff. And we have so many great stories and great connections with many of the people and the names that you would know in Cincinnati, whether it's William Howard Taft, who was great friends with a couple of our former presidents. They campaigned for him. Jacob Schmidlap, again, was good friends with him, started the American Red Cross here. We have Charles Moorline was on our board, so some of the Moorlines, just really wonderful names, and that continues on and on today. Pal Crosley Jr. was also on our board. We had connections with the Cincinnati Reds through Johnny Bench, who was our spokesperson for 30 years, and sometimes comes into the museum and takes over a tour, which we're okay with. We allow that. Allow Johnny to do his own tours, but we're really here to tell the story of Fifth Third and what we've done for the people and what we appreciate doing for the people of Cincinnati, and just telling our story in a fun way. And it's awesome. Square, so we're right inside our new atrium.
And it's open to the public, or?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, well, formally, it opened just about 2 or 3 days ago to employees, and we will do a formal opening here at the end of April, welcoming everybody in. We're dancing right now around the COVID protocols and number of people, et cetera, but there will be a more grand rollout when it's appropriate to do so.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you know, George Schaefer, again, just speaking of some past Fifth Third names, and Clem Binger, you know, just legends, really, I think, locally and in the business. And I know George would always talk about very proudly the wealth that Fifth Third helped create for, you know, employees and clients. And he took a lot of pride in that, and I think a lot of justifiable pride in that. And it's very true. So I'm excited to will come and visit and see it. You know, as a big baseball fan that I was, I remember as a kid not knowing very much about banking, but I remember that Johnny Bench said Fifth Third was the only bank you'll ever need. That was ingrained.
Testimonial, Jack. Thank you.
Absolutely. If it's good enough for Johnny Bench, man, it's good enough for me. I mean,
that's right. And you know, Jack, interestingly enough, the new exhibit, so we'll open on April 21st to the public again. Our lobby will be open to the public. And we'll do our grand opening ribbon cutting then. But the new exhibit features George Schaefer. So we decided this was the 20th anniversary of our acquisition of Old Kent. And that merger, wanted to make sure that we covered that and talk about the good history there. And we decided to feature George. So we've been in contact with him. We actually have some great artifacts. We have his full dress coat from his West Point days. We have his army jacket from Vietnam. It still has dirt on it from Saigon, according to George. Lots of other things. And we do have just a full booklet of congratulations letters when he became president of the bank. And there are a couple in there from people from Graydon. So they're definitely scrapbook. Yeah.
Do you have his elder letter jacket? I mean, that seems like
we have a hat. Yeah, we've got a hat. Yeah. But I love the congratulations letters, because lots of people talk about his West Side roots and how he was going to have to move out of the West Side. So there's lots of good Cincinnati inside jokes in those letters.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, I'll just share that. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, Jack, I think it's interesting that you bring up how proud that George was of the wealth that he built, because that's absolutely true. Certainly over the last 30 years I'm familiar with, but even going back to decades to our beginning, to look at the profound impact that that wealth has had, not only on families and subsequently schools and high schools and et cetera, but the trickle-down effect to where it goes in the community. And, we were through this whole COVID era stuff, looking at what the impact is onto our city, we've got to run this really delicate balance between the welfare of our citizens and our employees and keeping our downtown vibrant. And then, we're in, kind of Michigan to Florida and, 14 states predominantly, but in Ohio alone, we pay about $770 million in wages. And if you do the quick tax impact of that, that's about $26 million of tax impact that without people downtown here or wherever their respective cities are, that, so we feel very responsible to getting the city kickstarted again while being conscious of the health of our citizens and employees as well. That's something that we take really seriously, is that community aspect, not just employees.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about just how you see the mission going forward. We obviously, it's a great history and I think a bright future, but what do you see in terms of, what is Fifth Third's mission as you see it, and how do you put that into practice?
Yeah. So, I really think that our mission is about community and service. I mean, certainly there's a mission to the shareholder, but so much of what is good for the community is good for the shareholder as well. And that was really profound, I think. We've seen that throughout history, and Amy had referenced how we had survived the Civil War and survived World War I and II and the Depression. And I felt it very pronounced in 2008, and unfortunately in the shooting that we had here. And my deep memories of both of those will be the reaction of the community to us, those people who reached out to us. I mean, I just not in the shooting, but certainly in 2008, how many people embraced us and said, we didn't know at that time whether banks are going to open their doors the next day or not, and reached out and wanted to know how you were doing and rooting and cheering and pulling for us. And, and then in the shooting, how we felt that from you guys. I mean, Graydon, from the moment it occurred, invited us to your offices and how can you help and what do your people need? And that's had a really, really deep effect on me as an individual around the stewardship of the bank on the community. I think, we're part of the social fabric of the community, and it's not only our duty, but our obligation to take care of that community. And I really saw that doubled down here in the pandemic, where how, the leadership of our bank reacted very quickly to the welfare and well-being of our employees, that everybody, regardless of their circumstance, had paid status. We have more employees today than we did a year ago. I mean, we've grown during this. We gave our employees special pay, reloaded benefits, created childcare. And what's good for the employees is good for our community. And, and during that time, during the last year, we gave out $9.7 million in aid, in our community on top of the $32 billion that we gave over the last 5 years. So, I mean, I really hope that comes through loud and clear, not just in our words, but in our actions. And,
absolutely.
And I think that's our mission. Our mission is to take care of the communities that we live in and serve them, and everything else falls into place.
Yeah, well, I think you see that with what you're doing in Fountain Square and the new stage and the new, facade. I mean, you all, to a certain extent, are just by virtue of your location, I feel like somewhat stewards of Fountain Square in a way. And I think you've discharged that very well. And, that's still, we're all anxious to get back and put the pandemic behind us. But I think, Fountain Square has always been, and through all its different iterations, even in our lifetime, and will be. And I think what you all are doing in terms of your stewardship of that space, because that really is the center of the city. I think it always has been, and it always will be. And I think that's
Yeah,
just
we like to think of it as our front porch, the center of the city and our front porch. You know.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So were there any other things that with COVID that, obviously you talked about the things you did for your employees. How did it affect the business? I mean, were there any noticeable things you had to all pivot to,
Sure.
to address COVID?
Sure. So if you think about, 12, 13 months ago when all of this started to come down, the first 6 months of that, everybody, every business person, et cetera, was trying to figure out what's next and how do you live and how do I run my business and how do I run my family. And from the business perspective, you might recall that PPP, which was the government program that came in to support those businesses. And if you think about the majority of businesses, they're not the Fifth Thirds and Krogers and Procter and Gamble's, but it's those 3 and 5 person employees or the restaurants or et cetera. And so we dove into the PPP process, which was rocky. I mean, that process was being built as the car rolled down the highway. They were building the car. And that's not to blame anybody. It's just, it's the dynamic times that we were in. And during that time frame, we converted, I will say, all kind of non-client facing or non-sport workers into data entry. I mean, our VP of marketing was key punching PPP loans, as were many, many others. People were repositioned to keep the wheels of commerce rolling. And in a 60-day period, we fulfilled a 7-year supply of loans, or 70 years supply of loans, 70 years of loans took place. And, those dollars flowed into the pockets of people that were the difference between putting a meal on the table or keeping their college tuition paid or, and so, yeah, that really changed how we think about business and the importance of what we do. And it changed the logistics of how we do business. As everyone else is feeling, we're here now on a Zoom call, Jack,
Yep, exactly.
And so, how that looks going forward, I know there will be elements that will never change. And I hope they don't. We're going to be very progressive about how we show up at work. Work will become a place where you connect and develop and show leadership and grow culture. You can do your work from anywhere. You can, and so I don't think it makes a lot of sense to come to the office to take your virtual call from your office seat rather than your kitchen table. But we still think it's important to have a locker room and connect. And, and we're in the process now of starting to bring back our people in early to late April. And that's to bring people into the locker room and have everybody coalesce. And there will be a flexibility and a hybrid that you will work, 2, 3, 4 days a week, whatever is appropriate, and do your work from home, whatever is appropriate. So that's all playing out and here to stay, I believe.
No question. Yeah, I mean, so I think when you talk about history, you're going to have to, Amy, add that Fifth Third survived 2 pandemics too, So
that's right. I know. We are documenting every day what's happening. So, history happens every day, I like to say. And especially in 2020, history was happening every day. And we've been collecting and archiving and just looking at the great things that Fifth Third has been supporting and doing for other people, making sure that we'll be telling that story. So it will be in the museum, even though it's early history, but we'll do it.
Amy, one of my favorite stories is about the Green Book. Can you maybe share that? Sorry to take over as MC here, Jack.
You're doing great. Just let me know. Just let me know if you need anything.
Yeah. So I mentioned Jacob Schmidlap a little bit earlier. So he was the founder and president of Union Savings Bank and Trust Company. And so we were Fifth Third Union Trust for a long, long time, from 1927 through 1969 when we moved onto the square. That was when we officially changed our name to Fifth Third Bank. But Jacob founded Union Trust. We merged with Fifth Third National merged with Union Trust. Jacob, if you know him, and many Cincinnatians see his name all over the place, whether it's at Music Hall over the box office or in the Cincinnati Art Museum. He built a wing to the Art Museum in honor of his daughter. So many, many Schmidlap, there's lots and lots of Schmidlap history here. But if you don't know him, he was also a great philanthropist. He did a lot of progressive things for the city of Cincinnati. One of them, he gave us our first skyscraper in 1900, and that was built by Daniel Burnham. It's still standing today. It's the 4th and Walnut Street building. Today it's the Renaissance Hotel. So that was our Union Savings. Fifth Third Union Trust used to be in that building before we moved to the square.
As did Graydon, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Early,
Yeah.
In the early 1900s, though, around 1917, the African-American community in Walnut Hills, Jacob lived on Grandin Road off of Madison Avenue there and Madison Road. And he had befriended many, many people in Walnut Hills and was very much a community-minded man. And so he decided, the African-American community came to him, and think about it, we're in the early mid-1900s here. Cincinnati was pretty segregated at the time. And they said, Jacob, when people come to Cincinnati, our family and friends are visiting and traveling, there's not a hotel that they can stay in. There's nothing, no one will welcome our African-American friends and family. And so he built the Gordon Hotel in 1917, and that was in the Green Book up through the early 1930s. So it was a place for African Americans to stay. It eventually turned into an apartment housing, but it was a hotel, and actually many, many boxers. So African American boxers trained there. People would have dinner there. It became central to the community. And just like Cincinnati Model Homes, which was another one of his projects, and that was the first affordable housing units in Cincinnati. And Jacob was different in his time period because he rented to both blacks and whites at a time when many weren't. And so he affordable housing here. And those were up through some of the 1970s and 80s. There were still some of the Cincinnati model home projects. And some of those buildings you can still see today, even though they're with other landlords now. But really great story of Jacob, great inclusion and diversity story from our early days. And we're doing lots more at this point, but love to tell the story of the Gordon Hotel.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, and obviously Walnut Hills is going through another rebirth and lots of good things. And I know Fifth Third is involved in the projects that are up there. I wanted just to shift a little bit. I'd like to hear from each of you your own personal story, how you wound up at Fifth Third and your path that led you to your current position.
Amy, you want to lead off?
Are you sure? So I've only been with Fifth Third for 4 years, and the position for corporate storyteller and historian came about, and I had a friend call me, and I say this with all the kindness. She was like, Amy, there's this weird job, and it sounds like you. I was the weirdo that got to come along. But prior to that, I was at Luxottica up in Mason for 14 years. I was in corporate communications there and just was looking for a change and thought, wow, this sounds like a really interesting position, very similar to what I've been doing in my career, which is CorpCom. But I came to Fifth Third, took a chance on changing after 14 years. And about a year into the role, I was approached and somebody said, we're going to build a corporate museum. It's like, oh, I've done a lot of things, but I haven't built a corporate museum. However, I love history, love research, and decided, I was like, sure, I'm going to do this. And I ended up uncovering just an amazing amount of material. I had no idea. I was given 25 boxes of material. Some of them were just disjointed photos and all kinds of different things. I sorted through all of those. I found some old currency in the bottom of one of those boxes, and one of the bills is actually worth about $40,000.
Wow.
No,
finders keepers, right? I mean,
yeah, original bill from Fifth National, hand signed by Charles Hinch. So you never know what you're going to find in boxes. I'm now a professional dumpster diver. I go to some of our branches and look in their attics and their basements. But really, I feel such a sense of pride in Fifth Third because of the great history we have and just the immense support we've shown for our community and the people here. It's just a wonderful story to tell. And I'm glad that Fifth Third felt it was important enough to capture that history and keep it going. So I feel like I've got the greatest job here.
That's fantastic. Are you a Cincinnati native, Amy?
I am, yes. I went to Macaulay High School, if you need to know.
Macaulay?
Yeah, I'm a Macaulay girl.
That's great. I went to LaSalle, so
Oh, there you go.
you know, and Macaulay, Tim. I don't know if you've ever been there, but when it's now Macaulay Mercy, or Mercy Macaulay, right, I guess now. But when you walk in through the cafeteria, they have pictures of the graduating classes. You know, and so when my daughter Ellie, who was a basketball player, would play there, I would you know, regale her with, oh yeah, I dated her.
She might
would run up the stairs.
You might call that embarrassing her. Yeah.
Yeah, you might, you know. But anyway, that's great. That's great. Tim, how about you?
Yeah. So I'm born, reared, and educated here in our Queen City, and I think of myself not so proudly, but think of myself as the stereotypical Cincinnatian, in the sense that my parents were German and both grew up blue collar and in the Valley. Everybody asks East Side or West Side. Well, I grew up in the Valley, Hartwell, Laughlin, Reading, and Reading was always home to me. And then went to Moeller High School and then to UC and graduated from UC and began at the bank. And, you know, my mission at the bank began, I was a liberal arts major, so, you know, not a great numbers guy. But it occurred during the Clem Binger era. And he was really changing the nature of banking from guys sitting behind, you know, leather wooden desks and, you know, you coming in and begging for money to getting out from behind the desk and going out into the community. And that was, you know, in the early 80s and in 85, 86, I was actually introduced by a friend, a high school friend who was working at the bank, and we were in a wedding together, and he said, you ought to work at the bank. And I was like, the bank? Like, you know, I'm not good with numbers. And he said, no, it's really about building relationships. And you know, there's this new guy, Clem Binger, who's totally committed to creating relationships. And so that's how my career began at the bank. And I literally thought that I would do it for a couple of years, you know, look good on a resume, that kind of stuff, and got in here and loved it because it was just so important to be. It was all about relationships, and you got to see how the city worked and, you know, all the things we're talking about here, you know, the behind the scenes. So it's quite fascinating, and I love the people. And, you know, and so here I am 35 years later, and I'm very proud to be the president of, you know, a hometown guy at the hometown bank. That resonates deeply.
Absolutely. And, you know, your commitment, your passion to the city and to Fifth Third, you know, come through. And you're just one of these guys that, you know, when I was a kid, I literally, my dad drove a beer truck, and it just seemed like, you know, for Shandling, and it seemed like he knew you know, when he took me around, everybody seemed to know my dad. I literally thought everybody in the city knew my dad. I mean, I'm not like exaggerating. And I was disabused of that when I was a seventh grader. I should have known better, but I was caddying at Western Hills Country Club.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and I introduced myself, and I said, you probably know my dad, Joker. And the guy said, no. but Tim, I think of you now as the guy who knows everybody in Cincinnati. I mean, because I think when you know, we talk, it's like, oh, do you know? Yeah, I know him. You know, it's like, so you have taken the place of my dad as the guy who everybody in town knows, I think. You know?
Well, I'm a father figure to you. I've never been more flattered in my life.
How about that? Yeah, well, you called me old earlier, so now it's my turn to, you know, kind of turn.
Jack, as painful as this is for me to do and say, I'm going to do it nonetheless, because when we talk about iconic conversations, you know, I was part of one that you were present at. And for those of you who are listening out there, Jack's nickname is Befalia, which is an acronym for Best First Amendment Lawyer in America. And I was there at the dinner when Tom Callanan, the former editor of the Cincinnati Enquirer, looked at me with all earnestness and said, you know, Jack's the best First Amendment lawyer in America. And I was like to that day, my stomach hasn't been the same. And it's still, you know, it still hurts me. But, you know, that's certainly tall praise coming from, you know, the guy who ran the Enquirer. And Jack, I think that is actually true of you and the firm, of all the things you've done. You've got a lot of great people sitting right here in our city, and you don't need to go anywhere to find the best. Absolutely.
Well, Befalia really rolls off the tongue too. Hey, listen, I wanted to, let's talk about the city a little bit because we've got three natives here. And we've been asking in these iconic conversations about Cincinnati. And what would you say, Amy, if you were recruiting to convince somebody to locate in Cincinnati, what would be some of your sales points that you might make to them?
It's a really good question. And I'm a boomerang. So I've been out of Cincinnati and I've come back. I've been out of Cincinnati and come back twice. So lived in Chicago and lived up in Northeast Ohio. I would say it's a great place to raise a family, right? So it's a lovely place to be. It's a beautiful city. I think we have a great park system. I've been in other places. It's affordable, it's welcoming, and we have a lot going on. So I think of everything, like one of my favorite things is the Flying Pig every year. So I run and have done plenty of Flying Pigs, but there's just a lot going on. There's a really good vibe here. I think it's a positive vibe. I think there's a sense of pride, sense of civic pride in being from Cincinnati. But if you're not from here and you're coming in from out of town, I think people do welcome you and say, come on into our family and, let me show you. I've had lots of friends who aren't from here and, where can we go? What should we do? I think people are very open to doing that sort of thing. But I think that sense of pride and just that this is a really great place to raise a family.
No doubt. Yeah, the Flying Pig, the growth of it too. I ran in the very first one and, it just where it has come and how it's evolved is just truly, truly amazing.
Amazing.
It is quite an event. It really is. And quite a challenging course too, thanks to all the hills.
True. We love the hills. Yes.
That is for sure. That is for sure. So Tim, I'm going to ask both of you this, but I'll lead with you, Tim. So your favorite, if you needed to tell somebody from outside of the city, hey, when you come in, we're gonna eat this food or we're gonna go to this event, what would be on your list there for folks?
Yeah, Jack, Joe Allen, who ran the GE Center right down here when they put it on the banks, he was responsible for pulling together a lot of the shared services, so accounting, logistics, et cetera, for GE here. And so he was moving people into Cincinnati or needed to recruit them from wherever they were up in Connecticut or Houston or the coast. And he told the story that my biggest sales job was to get him on the plane. And then once I got him on the plane, I knew I had him. That's a little bit like when you go to the tailor, if he can get that jacket on to you, if he just gets you to try it on, you're 2/3 of the way there on the sell. And so, I think that Cincinnati speaks for itself. And if it was me, being selfish, what I would do is I would probably get them on the bike paths. We're doing a great job with all the bike paths and the Crown Project now that's going on, that Wim Portman and many others are putting their shoulders behind, Mayor Cranley. We're going to have a path circling the city.
Absolutely.
I'd get them on the bike and we'd ride around the city, and I think they would see how you have everything here in this city. You have all the aspects of a big town, great culture, great culture and arts and restaurants and professional sports, but you don't have the traffic, right? And you can conquer this city and you can get on. And so I'd put them on the bike paths. We'd come downtown, probably go see all the murals that Artworks have done, which have a great spot in my heart.
Absolutely.
Try and take them to the Reds game or something and see how the city moves. I mean, I always hear from people who go to New York who talk about going to a Yankees or a Mets game or a New York Giants football game. It's an all-day affair because it takes 4 hours to get in and 4 hours to get home. Then you have a 3-hour game sandwiched in between. And how you can do that in 20 minutes.
Right.
It's fantastic. And, and then I'd take them to, Pep and Dolores and OTR or the Precinct or wherever and just experience that quality of life that we take for granted without traffic jams and congestion and the accessibility. That would be the Elsbrock pitch, just the final third. The 2/3 is getting them here. The final third is just, taking them around and let it sell itself, and it does.
No doubt. It's funny when you said get them on the plane, and I think about somebody who's never been to Cincinnati. If they land at CVG and they drive and all of a sudden there's that skyline. It
Yeah,
just
right.
appears, and I just wonder if there's any other city that kind of has that quality where it's like you don't see it and then you see it. And it's
Yeah.
just, it
You're
is so
the hill,
with the
there it
bridges
is.
and the buildings.
The great
It
reveal.
really is. That's right. So Amy, what would be your treat or event? You talked about Flying Pig. Any other things come to mind that you might
Well,
share with somebody from out of town?
I would, not to get back into running and beer, but Bachfest is so much fun.
That's a good one.
So the
Yeah,
5K,
great.
the Bachfest 5K, and just the tradition. There's tons of German roots here. I happen to be half Irish and half German, and so I get good St. Patrick's Day fun, but also love the German traditions that we have here, Bachfest and others. I mean, that is just a lovely time period. And again, just, anything that is involved in the park system, I think we just have a wonderful, Hamilton County parks are beautiful. I think our museums are amazing. So the Art Museum, the Taft Museum, Cincinnati Museum Center, we've got a really nice network of museums. I would say from a treat standpoint, I'm a vegetarian, but I would say, there's now Skyline has vegetarians, so it's great. And so does Gold Star. But I'm a Skyline girl. I'm definitely a Skyline chili fan. And back in the day when I did eat meat, Geta, again, if you go to the German, you got to give people those tasty treats and have them try that out. And I would also say just going to a Cincinnati Reds game is something that's so fun to do in the summer. Especially you can walk from the square, you can watch it on the square if you want to, and just feeling the general, just good vibes in the city during game day is great.
No question. And Grader's is coming out with some vegan ice cream too. So that's.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. That's great. Hey, well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I think we're going to have to send this Zoomcast to the Chamber of Commerce here. I think we've done quite the sales job among the three of us, but that's what happens when you get three native Cincinnatians together. I think there's quite a lot to talk about and share. But this was truly an iconic conversation, Amy. It's a real pleasure meeting you. So thank you for joining, Tim. It's always a great time to spend with you. So this was great. Thank you very much, and we will sign off. So thanks so much.